When I was a teenager, my friends and I loved to play in the forest surrounding our town. It was beautiful and, for the most part, pretty safe. Occasionally someone would have an accident, but it'd been over 30 years since someone had died. Overall, our town was pretty quiet. The kind of place where people could leave their doors unlocked at night without having to worry. One year, for my birthday, I woke up to an empty house. My parents were on the other side of the country and would be gone for another few weeks. My grandmother had been really sick and the three of us had flown out to see her. When she started to recover, my parents flew me back home so I wouldn't miss any more school. Since I was able to take care of myself and my neighbours could keep an eye on me, my parents weren't worried about me being home alone. Also, if worse came to worse, I could just stay with my friends. I told them to stay with Grandma until she was out of the hospital and settled back home. We could celebrate my birthday when I got back. I know it's kind of cheesy, but every year for my birthday we went to the best pizza place in town, and for my birthday cake we would take home their s'mores dessert pizza. My mum would put candles on the pizza and I'd blow them out. It was childish, but I enjoyed the tradition, and so did my parents. When I made my way downstairs, I found a note waiting for me on the kitchen table. It was from my friends who had put together a treasure hunt for me. The first riddle was pretty easy, but I was excited. I smiled and grabbed a chocolate chip muffin to eat while I walked to the first location. The treasure hunt took me all over town, which wasn't bad since it was a really small town. It turned out several people in town were in on this treasure hunt. I went to the bookstore where the owner let me pick out a book as a gift before giving me my next hint. It was the same at the bakery. I got to choose what cake would be made from scratch and delivered to my party later on. It was really cool that so many people got involved. As expected, I eventually ended up in the forest. Even before reading the first hint, I knew the final location would be the treehouse my friends and I had built deep in the forest. But the treasure hunt was about the journey, not really the destination. I got to a hint that had a compass and map waiting for me. There were 2 blue dots on the map. It was easy to tell which dot represented my location and which dot represented the destination. On my way there, though, I realized the compass wasn't pointing north. The sun, which should have been mostly in the east, was to the south according to the compass. I also realized I didn't recognize this part of the forest and I knew I was lost. I wasn't too worried about it though. I knew the general direction of the town, and even if I was off on exactly where it was, I would eventually reach the highway that ran through the town. I would just follow it back. I decided to keep following the compass for a while. Maybe they knew about the compass and accounted for it during the map making. I was really enjoying this part of the forest. The trees were spaced a good distance apart from each other and the ground was pretty level. I did sigh with relief though when I found a wide dirt path that was heading in the same direction I was going. After a while of following the path, my mind started to wander and I lost track of time. But I knew when I reached my destination. In the middle of the pathway stood a tree that both terrified and fascinated me. The tree was a blackish grey colour with smooth bark. It was taller than all the other trees surrounding it and wider than any tree I'd ever seen before. The wood was twisted and gnarled from the roots to the tips of the branches. There were no leaves, but the wood was covered in thorns in some places. With each step closer, I realized the curves and twists in the wood formed shapes, and the forming shapes morphed into faces. The detail in the faces was unbelievable. I could see each strand of hair, even eyelashes. The open eyes had pupils, and open mouths had teeth. Wrinkles, scars, dimples, and freckles could all be seen. The faces were all different. Within the wood I could see every age, every race, and every emotion I could identify, and more. I began to circle the tree slowly, almost hypnotized by the faces. When I got halfway around the trunk, I noticed the path continued on the other side. It was almost like the tree had been set down directly in the middle of the path. After staring down the continuing pathway for a while, I looked back to the tree confused, and my breath caught in my throat when I saw a girl about my age staring back at me from the wood. She was beautiful with cat-like eyes, full lips, and the cutest button nose I'd ever seen. Her long hair fell loosely around her face. I started to reach out slowly and touch her cheek. Part of me wondered what the tree would feel like. For some reason I was sure it would be different than any other tree I'd come across before. My fingertips were inches away when I heard a soft growl behind me. I spun around, searching the ground and trees, but saw nothing. As I continued to search the trees, I noticed something I hadn't before. The trunks of the surrounding trees were shaped like humans. The roots and the base of the trunk were normal, but then they morphed into shoes or bare feet, the shape of each person continuing up their bodies to the top of their heads before morphing back into a normal tree again. As I began to walk around the forest of people, I was amazed. They all had the same amount of detail the faces on the black tree had. I could see every detail down to the wrinkles in their clothes, the laces of their shoes, and the jewelry that some of them wore. They even had finger and toenails. I felt like the trees were watching me. Chills froze me to the bone. I wanted to scream, but I didn't dare make a sound. I decided it was time for me to leave. I quickly turned around and made my way back to the dirt path. As I stepped onto the path, I heard a low growl. A strange wolf was crouched at the base of the black tree. Its eyes were liquid blue velvet. Its fur was black and white, but the white was like liquid starlight and the black like liquid darkness. Around the wolf's eyes and ears were strange tattoo-like markings. The wolf had an intense presence that made it hard to breathe. The intelligence in the wolf's eyes terrified me. Not sure how long we stayed there, just watching each other. Eventually, I started to move slowly away from the wolf, back towards the way I'd come. I noticed a sheet of paper lying on the ground and knelt to pick it up as I passed it. The wolf growled softly at my movements, but didn't move. I glanced at it long enough to see that it was the next hint in my treasure hunt. The wolf stood up straight and watched me leave. I didn't turn completely until the trees with faces were well out of sight, and the trees around me looked normal. As I made my way through the forest, I constantly looked around for the wolf, but only saw rabbits and squirrels. As I was walking, I looked at the last note I'd found. As expected, the riddle told me to go to the treehouse. When I reached a part of the forest I recognized, I ran for the treehouse. My friends were there waiting for me, but their excitement quickly turned to fear. My friend that was supposed to place the final note had never returned. We decided to go to the police. I hadn't told them about the weird trees and wolf, but the forest can still be dangerous. The police took our friend's disappearance very seriously. I didn't tell the police about the trees and the wolf either. Every time I opened my mouth to tell them, the dread filled me and the words wouldn't come out. Several search parties were formed and sent into the forest. I was told to take 2 officers to the place I'd found the last note. We made our way through the trees, calling my friend's name as we went. When we reached the dirt path, we could see my footprints from before. My heart started pounding as we followed them. With each step, the fear inside me grew. But when we reached the place I'd found the note, my fear turned to confusion. The strange trees were gone. The forest around us looked normal. We could see my footprints from when I'd circled the tree with the faces and when I'd walked off into the trees, as well as when I came back to the path. Several paw prints were mixed in with my footprints. We searched the area, but there was no sign of my friend. For the next several weeks, search parties explored the forest day and night, but didn't find anything. I now have a fear of trees. After I graduated, I moved to the city, and I haven't left it since.